Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast right here on the Everything Electric channel. Oh, it's all marvellous. This is such a joy. Every now and then I do record an episode of the podcast. It's just like I don't have to do much work because my guest is just amazing and full of fascinating insights and information. And this is one of those experiences. So today's guest is Steve Beattie. He works for BYD, Chinese car maker, who are making huge inroads into Europe in general, but into this country in particular. Also South America, we do briefly touch on that. Just fascinating how quickly this company has emerged and how powerfully and the impact they're having. I think I first became aware of them in about 2009, so like a year before the Fully Charged Show started. I saw some BYD cars at the Geneva Motor Show. I wasn't overly impressed. Didn't really have a kind of strong opinion. Just it was kind of, they were such a sort of weird fringe thing. I didn't really take much notice, but I do remember seeing them there. But, you know, there were sort of new Volvos and new Fords and new Audis and, you know, European brands absolutely at their peak. At that time in Europe, obviously. And then you've got to say things have changed quite a lot since then. Just the quality of those cars. And I mean, I lived with an Atto 3, a BYD Atto 3 for 3 months while I was in Australia. And so wasn't like having a test drive for an afternoon, just used it regularly as a car, kind of just normal, didn't even think about it. And I had to keep reminding myself what an amazing car that is. And so easy to use, to charge, to drive long distances, all those things. Very grateful to my sister-in-law for lending it to us, but no, really great car. So it's been really interesting to kind of catch up and see what's happening with BYD and what's coming up. They've got some amazing stuff that's going to appear this year. I think the whole idea that we've been noticing the enthusiasm for is smaller, cheaper, lighter electric cars, and that's coming with BYD quite soon, this year. I mean, like next month almost. So this is really good fun. I really hope you enjoy it. Please do tell your friends about the Everything Electric show and the podcast we do here. And please do subscribe. I'm saying this now because I think it makes more sense than at the end. And that's it. Now, so please do welcome Steve Beattie from BYD to the Fully Charged Show podcast.
We've teamed up with Duracell Energy to celebrate their brilliant ecosystem of home energy products and their platinum homeowner offer by giving away a Duracell bunny. To win, simply watch to the end and answer a question about the Fully Charged Show.
So, Steve, can we just go, because it is fascinating how short and intense the history of BYD is, and I'm sure you've had to do this many times, but just for the people who I think now are generally aware of the company in this country. I think it's the first new Chinese company that's come into Europe, and particularly in the UK. I've asked lots of people who know nothing about cars, aren't interested, and they've heard of BYD now. And I think even if I'd asked them a year ago, they wouldn't have done. So I basically, you're doing quite a good job. But it is how quickly it's grown and become apparent in this country.
Yeah, do you know what? I think we're surprised at probably the growth and the interest in BYD in this country.
Yeah.
So much so, funny enough, my daughter came into the garden on Sunday afternoon, like she's 18, she's doing A-levels. She went, "Dad, my friend's just asked why you're on his feed." I'm like, his social media feed for something. Right. Talking about BYD. So yeah, so we obviously were getting anywhere, even to young people.
That's impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, brief history of BYD. You probably know this, Robert, but I think it's always nice to know. So We are a young company. We've been going 30 years. Started by our chairman, so Chairman Wang. So he started the business, which I think is always a lovely story because for me, it feels like a family business. Right. You know, we're a real flat structure. We actually had him over last week, him and Stella and his executive team, to sort of look at the UK and do a European tour and what was happening. But it's for me, what's incredible is that I can sit down in a meeting, and it's my third meeting. I've only been here sort of 7 months with the chairman to go different things, and the interest that they've got and the level of detail of the business for me is lovely to see that as a global company that sold 4.2 million cars last year, that they're still really interested in sort of the smaller areas. As I say, so started 30 years ago, and actually Chairman Wang started selling batteries or making batteries. That's what he did. And you go to the old Nokia 3310s and all those batteries and little batteries we used to take out. And that was it, really. He realized he could do them better or, more efficient than where they were getting from. And that's really how the company grew. There's obviously a number of different things we do. It's big in electronics. We make X percentage of the world's iPads. There's a large amount of the world's iPads we make. A load of the world's AirPods. 1 in 5 smartphones have got our technology in. So we are an electronics and a battery company first. But I think the chairman decided he wanted to get into automotive, and various different guises throughout that. I guess the real milestone was probably sort of when we went all electric, or towards a new electric vehicle, which was sort of 2017, 2015 when they made that decision, sort of glow in terms of moving that. And then, so that's sort of where the organisation have come from. I think if you look at the UK, we've actually been in here since 2013. We've got nearly 2,500 electric buses running around the UK. So which is quite exciting. And what I love about it, and do you know what? I don't think you really visualise this. So there's a picture of when Michael Shue came over to set Europe up. And there was him and 6 people from China, and they've got the picture at the airport and they're waving off. And you think, wow, when you go and set something up new in a new country, you don't expect global organizations for 6 people to turn up and just start knocking on doors to open it up. And that's literally how I guess it started in Europe, really. Sorry, I flip-flop between UK and Europe. Just that picture came into my mind for the listeners to sort of view.
I mean, I think, Steve, I think it's fair geographically to say we are in Europe. It's not contentious. That's where we are.
Absolutely. So then, as I say, we got the buses that started in 2013. Then in 2023, we moved into cars in Europe. We launched in April 2023 in the UK. We've now got a car park of about 20,000 cars. So about 5,000 plug-in hybrids and about 15,000 electric. That really is accelerated in the last 4 or 5 months. I think if you can probably see the registration stats. So I said to the chairman when we were over in Shenzhen, I said, we're going to sell more cars in Q1 than we did in the whole of last year. So I set myself a bit of a big target, really. But the team and the dealers have done an incredible job of achieving that. So we did 9,500 cars, give or take, in Q1. And then last month we did 2,500 cars, which took us to 2% market share for the month of April.
And this is a company that's only been in this country a couple of years, I suppose. I mean,
2 years in terms of cars.
That's cars, I know the buses have been around for a long time, haven't they? But the cars,
exactly,
that is incredible, isn't it? I mean, because I've just been for the first time in China. I was just in Shanghai for the motor show, and we saw lots of other things as well. But it was, it's very hard not to be aghast and sort of blown away. Just and I'm really talking about the technology, the infrastructure, how they have built things so fast, so huge, on such a massive scale. So I mean, the first thing that hit me was scooters. Well, they didn't hit me, but I watched them. And there's just tens of thousands of electric scooters went past me in a half an hour. And then it was the cars. I'm going, oh, wait a minute, I can't hear any cars. And buses. They're all, and all the taxis electric, all the buses electric, all the scooters. And then every now and then you hear a combustion engine, which is a car. And you go, oh, there's one of the old ones, which goes vroom. Because I'm talking central Shanghai, so it's probably not a fair comparison for the whole of China, but it's an extraordinary difference. And the only experience I've had before was secondhand from my brother-in-law, who lived in Shanghai about 15 years ago for about 5 years, and all he did was send us pictures of the terrible air pollution, appalling, where he was told not to leave the house and go to his office because it's the air was so toxic, and the air was beautifully clean. It's like being out in the country, right in the middle of Shanghai. So that's my recent experience. And also just the staggering number of BYDs. They've sold quite a few in China, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, we've done really well. I mean, China's a big market. It's about 25 million cars a year.
Wow.
So it is a big market. We probably did about 4 million last year because we exported a couple of 100,000, give or take. but actually we're number one in China.
Right.
So to be number one, we talk about being number one, but to be number one in China,
amazing.
The market's probably got maybe 150 brands. We've probably got about 65 in the UK.
Yeah.
I think is incredible.
Yeah.
To drive that performance, and for a car company that's so young as well.
Yeah.
30 years young as it was. The team over there have done a fantastic job, and the product team in building the cars. And I think it's interesting what you say in terms of what it was like in China from your brother-in-law 15 years ago. And I think really what, for me, people say, well, what is the real difference? I said, well, look, I don't work in a European car manufacturer's engineering department, but what I do understand from what the team have done in China is they adopted electric technology very, very early and said, actually, we are betting on this technology to work.
Yeah.
And the research and development, we've got nearly 120,000 engineers in BYD alone.
Yeah.
Just think about that power of those people and their minds developing different things every day. It's just unbelievable, really.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that I thought was interesting, and I think it's a good idea for us to touch on. It was actually at the BYD stand at the Shanghai Auto Show. Wasn't about a new car. It was about how BYD are building batteries and how they're testing them to destruction. The new generation of batteries. I mean, the stuff they were doing. They had video footage of like battery packs, just the packs, being crushed by hydraulic presses, having massive spikes driven through them, being submerged under salt water. Everything. You're just like, no, it's got it. That's but they don't catch fire. That's the thing. They're not catching fire. They've really, and that's their whole really long presentation about this battery safety was really interesting.
Yeah, again, I've come from Volvo, so sort of safety was at the foremost. But at BYD, with all the technology that we're bringing out, it does feel very, very much that it's all about safety.
Yeah.
If we look at a couple of the things, so first of all, we look at our blade battery.
Yeah.
So our battery, so if you think of it again, so you've got a battery, let's say a big square battery pack. So the first thing is our battery is integrated into the chassis of the vehicle, which makes it a lot firmer in terms of accidents and what have you, because it's not a battery that's placed in like an engine. Yeah. It's actually built into the chassis of the vehicle. I think the second thing is in terms of batteries, of course, in traditional batteries with the way that they're of course they're battery plaques. They're like a little breeze block that sits into that. Yeah. Whereas ours, in terms of that, it's like a blade. So you've got the blades that fit in there. So actually, when you do crash with it, in terms of if you were to crash with it, it's a lot safer. And actually, that demonstration you talk about, so at Shenzhen, not the museum, we've got like I guess it's a showroom in Shenzhen in our main office. Actually, like every hour they're
stabbing batteries.
Stabbing, and you see ours. You see a traditional blade battery, which is fine and does not catch fire. But then you see an NCM battery, and it does. Yeah. So it's all about safety. And then of course you've got God's Eye that we're working on as well, which is again listening to the chairman. God's Eye, which I think is a great name for it. It's basically just, I would say. And again, the product people will probably kill me for this, but it's like LiDAR on steroids, really. It's effectively eyes around the whole vehicle. But it wasn't about necessarily, it's not about us being autonomous. It's about how can we protect people and how can we really make our cars safer? And that's what that does. Yeah. And the bit that I loved is you can just put it into a car park and press park myself and it will just go off and park for you. But really it's about the safety element for me more than anything on God's Eye.
Because that's the other video I saw, which is what I saw that previously to going out to China, but was the kind of standard crash test. So interestingly, the only time I've witnessed a real live crash test is in Gothenburg at Volvo in Sweden, where we were actually sitting behind a big perspex screen and they actually crashed. And it's so shocking when you're there, and we've all seen that film footage and it's slow-mo and it goes crumple. When you see it, it's like, oh my God, that was horrendous. There's plastic and bits of glass flying everywhere, really horrifying. But they showed 3 crash tests on one BYD Seal, and like side impact, front impact, smashed it to bits. Yeah. And then they took the battery pack out of that car, put it in another car, and drove the other car away. The battery was fine. Car was completely written off, but
wow,
that was it.
Well, hopefully there's some insurance companies listening.
I know,
and hopefully listening. And they'll put our insurance ratings down so the wonderful customers can have a cheaper car.
Well, it's now become my sort of bugbear, chip on my shoulder, is from interviewing fire officers. So you interview fire officers, and I go, well, and then you sort of do the thing about car safety and how many vehicle fires and getting people out and all that. And then you ask them what they drive. They all drive electric cars because they're safer. And they've put out so many vehicle fires that are in combustion engine vehicles and hybrids. They say, no, if you look at the statistics, it's bonkers how tiny the proportion. And yet that's still a thing. We get those comments on YouTube. Well, I wouldn't buy electric car. They're going to burst into flames any minute. Well, that's clever bit of marketing. Whoever managed to push that story.
Yeah, it might have come from an oil company, maybe.
Well, I wouldn't dream of suggesting that, but it's just possible. The car that I've driven a lot recently is the Atto 3 in Australia. So I stayed in my sister-in-law's house while she was in our house in the UK, and she gave us her Atto 3. And I just want to say, this is a woman who has as much interest in cars as I have in a skirting board painting techniques. I'm just trying to think of something that I'm not interested in. She's interested in art and the history of the Italian Renaissance and things like that. She's obsessed with this car. It's so interesting. First electric car she's ever had. And she loves it. She plugs it in at home and she turns the air conditioning on before she gets into it because it's so hot. She lives in Brisbane. And it's intriguing to see. I mean, this is partly just electric cars in general, but her attitude has been, the fact that she'll even talk about it to me at all. And I don't think this isn't because of my influence. I mean, they've just become very common in Australia. I mean, the huge increase in electric vehicle uptake in Australia is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure you've heard about it. Yeah. It's really big.
Yeah, no, it's been strong, isn't it? I mean, we're not doing too bad. I mean, we're the best market in Europe and the UK, aren't we? In terms of excluding Norway, of course. Yeah. In terms of the big markets, I guess, in terms of EV uptake. And for me, what I really can't understand, Robert, is when I'm talking to people and I say, can you charge at home? Do you have a drive, or can you actually charge at home? And when they say yes, and they tell me they're still in a combustion engine, it blows my mind. Yeah. So my brother and his wife, she's a school teacher, they've just gone into a BYD.
Right.
Now, they were in an ICE car before. Yeah. And he's been adamant against it. He doesn't want an electric vehicle. I've said, you need to go into it. And I've helped him get the car, get into it. So it was easy for him to get a charge in, like a charge into that. And he's texting me every day or every week. Oh, do you know what? His wife goes to work. She's 30 miles there, 30 miles back. He's like, it's only cost me £6.74 this week, And then he's going, oh, now I've sold another car to a customer at Sainsbury's. And I'm like, and it's funny, isn't it? Because once you're converted, once you have gone into electric, and you can charge at home, it's unbelievably cost effective. You'd be crazy not to. Yeah. There's two things I hate doing in the world. One of them is shaving, so I was glad that beards become a bit more trendy, and and the second thing was going to a petrol station. I've been driving a BEV for years now, so that's.
But I mean, that's the. I think because I think it's a really legitimate argument is how unfair it is for people who can't park off the road. I think that's perfectly fair. But the point is, I think there's about 1.4 million BEVs on the roads in the UK now, and there's 12.5 million homes on government statistics where you can park off the street. So if there was 12.5 million electric cars now, and everyone who can park off the street had them, I'd shut up. I'd retire. Yeah. But there's room for another 11 million electric cars for people who have no problem. They can save so much money from buying petrol, and then we can solve the problem. But in other countries, China's a good example. Everyone there lives in apartments, and they've got huge numbers of electric cars, so that it can be done.
Yeah, and I think picking up on something you said there, and I've sort of suggested this before. I think we're in danger of becoming a two-tier country when it comes to electric vehicles. And it's those that can and those that can't. Yeah. And for me, the government, They need to, I'm not talking about subsidies. I'm not saying
No.
help me make my cars cheaper, help people get into the cars. For me, what they need to concentrate on is how do they support the infrastructure?
Yeah.
And you don't need a charger everywhere,
No.
but I'm talking about the cost of putting in fast charging, because it's hugely expensive to be able to put the fast chargers in and get the grid. So the organisations that want to do that, I applaud them. But the government need to work out, firstly, financially, how can they support that?
Yeah.
And then secondly, what do they do in terms about the price of wholesale electricity coming to those organisations? And once we can figure that out, and effectively, okay, we're always going to you're always going to pay a little bit more from not being at home.
Yeah.
And maybe it is, your average is 26p a kilowatt, and maybe it should be maybe 35p a kilowatt or something like that. But that's what the government need to fix.
Yeah.
If they can fix that, then they're going to find a solution to get more people that can't charge at home into electric vehicles. It takes that away, because why would I go and spend all the upfront money of an electric vehicle if it's going to cost me the same money as an ICE?
Yeah,
and I've got that range anxiety that I'm not sure of. For me, for the long journeys that people do, where you might have to stop 2 or 3 times, once a year, whatever that is, the actual never having to go to a petrol station and being able to charge at home, and that saving the inconvenience of me stopping when I'll need to stop anyway, because the car will have outlasted my bladder.
Thank you.
By the time I'm a coffee. So.
Very important thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. No, I think, but I mean, it would be a difficult thing to market, but I think bladder range, I can just see the big poster, goes further than your bladder. Well, it's not going to, I know that's not going to happen.
That reminds me of like the 70s or 80s, when you see the old car adverts, you're like, I can't believe that people advertise like
that. Yes.
That would have been one of those, right?
But it's absolutely true. And actually, I used a charger. There's a big charging hub just outside Winchester that's just opened. So I kind of did a journey via that to charge there and I did a little report from it. But the point of it was, if I hadn't been filming a bit, I didn't do much, but I did a bit. I would have got there, plugged in. I went in, used the restroom, as they say. Went in and bought a coffee, and then I got an alarm from my car because it was full. And I go, no, I'm not ready. I want longer. This is too fast. And that. I mean, obviously there it didn't matter because there was plenty of chargers. I wasn't stopping anybody else charging. But that. The speed. Well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was the Han. Is it the Han L? The insanely fast charging. But we can do that in a minute. But that is just bonkers. That changes the whole picture, doesn't it?
Our Super E platform that effectively you can charge as quick as you can fill up a petrol car or an ICE, a diesel car. Yeah, I mean that's really exciting. Not sure, when we'll see it in the UK.
No.
But that being said, there's you look at technology that we've launched the Seagull in China, which is our small electric car in China. So it's, if anyone wants to have a look at it, they can Google Seagull or they can Google Dolphin Mini, because it's been launched in Latin America as Dolphin Mini.
Right, wow.
We're bringing it into June, so it launched on the middle of June, June the 10th, June the 11th.
Right.
Dolphin Surf. For various reasons, we didn't call it Dolphin, the other word.
Right.
So we call it Dolphin Surf. Yeah. So that's coming in, and that's a sub £20,000 electric car.
Wow.
So that's really exciting. And that was 2 years ago, launched in China.
Right.
So I guess what I'm sort of bridging to is back to the Super E platform tech is, okay, it's not here yet, but generally we've seen things come over in a few years' time. Yeah. So, we'll absolutely be hoping that we're going to see this on our cars. But I think the different thing to worry is then someone go, well, are they going to be able to put these, they've said in China they're invested in megawatt charging, this super cooled megawatt charging. But the great thing about this is actually it's dual gunned. Right. So even if effectively you could, in theory, you could pull up to a car and you've got the 2 chargers either side, and then you could plug in both sides effectively, and then you're getting 350 kilowatts, right? Yeah. Or whatever it was, 250 or whatever the speed is. So I think potentially in markets where they don't have the megawatt charger, because it's dual gun, it could still definitely work. Yeah. But as you say, 15 minutes and you're topped up.
Far enough. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's that's the thing. It's hard to explain to people, but you actually do. I mean, what's a fascinating thing is when you look at people who are now driving electric trucks. And you'd go, well, electric trucks will never work. You can't, they can't do this. Yes, they can. And the driver has to stop by law for 45 minutes. Well, they stop at where they can charge. There's a great guy in Germany who's doing videos of his really long haul, heavy truck journeys in electric trucks. But he's got to stop. He hasn't got the choice. It's the law. He has to stop for 45 minutes, plugs the truck in. It makes no difference to their journeys, to their logistics. Every now and then he does great. He's very honest about it, because he'll come to a charger which is built for cars, and it's really difficult to get his massive truck in there, but he does. And then the charger doesn't work, in the middle of the night, and that's a nightmare. So it's not all perfect by any means, but just that, the reality of the human body, as we mentioned, and electric car charging. It's such a complex thing to explain to people, but the thing is, it's not a problem. Rapid charging, is it? And doing long journeys, it's just not a problem.
No, absolutely. And I think the other thing I love about electric cars is the performance, right? Yeah. So the BYD Seal, I'm quite lucky. I've got a Seal Excellence, and I think it's like 500 horsepower.
Oh
and
God.
It's and you're talking that car, 500 horsepower, it's like £47,000.
Right.
It's got everything in it. It's got full leather. It's got 360 camera. It's got panoramic roof. Anything you can name from a tech perspective is in this car. It's got all of the adaptive cruise control, the lane assist, everything. Right. Like so much tech going on in this car. It's got the screen which you can switch if you like it portrait or landscape. Very, very important, Robert. But for me, I just love the performance. I love that if I need to, you can just put it's instant, isn't it? Electric is instant. Whereas petrol takes a while for it to go through the turbo and go. Yeah. But it's just instant. And I love that. I don't think I could, again, go back to an ICE car when I've experienced the performance of these.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's because I did the test drive. I was allowed to do that one. When the Seal was first launched, I was up there in the Lake District. I think it took place in very heavy rain. So I've only driven it. That's the Seal. I've only driven it for about an hour and a half. Not on a classic test drive day. But I loved it. I mean, I was really impressed with it.
What about the Sea Lion 7? Have you driven that? Our newest?
No. I've now seen them. I saw them in Shanghai a lot. But no, I haven't driven that one yet. No. I mean, I'm sure it's on our list. Yeah.
After this podcast, I'll get you one out, Robert, and you can try it for a few minutes. Let me know what you think about it. So it'd be really good to understand your views of it as well. So, I mean, that's so sort of bringing it back, I guess, to our cars again. So we've now got 5 cars in the UK. So 4 of those are electric, and it's probably important. I know this is fully charged, but of course you charge it. We've also got it's called DMI, which is our plug-in hybrid technology. Yeah. I mean, the difference between plug-in hybrid and DMI is effectively the engine acts as a generator. So it's trying to use the electric as much as it possibly can. You can charge it. You can get, it's like 77 miles on a full charge on the comforts, the Seal U Comfort model. But of course, the way the engine works is because it's around town, it's efficient. It's effectively keeping you in electric mode as possibly as you can. Once it goes onto the motorway, it will then go into petrol, of course, because otherwise it's not an efficient way of doing it. But I think you can get about 700 miles out of one tank. And I love reading the Facebook groups about that car because they're sort of that's how good it is. And that's our biggest seller, actually. We've done 5,000 of those so far this year in terms of the Seal U. And it's a really strong car. I think it's bridging that gap. It's making people realise they can go to electric. Yeah. They drive mostly on electric. And actually, they've got the backup. So I definitely think, for me, what's exciting is the customers that are in Seal U today, I absolutely know that when we look at renewing those in 2 to 3 years or 3 years' time, they'll be considering an electric car. I think they'll have lived with it for so long.
I mean, it is the journey. I mean, certainly the journey I went on was I had a Golf R32. So my steps from Golf R32 to Prius, that was quite a big jump.
Wow, that is a big jump.
Yeah. Well, it's the only time I think any salesperson has ever said, when I was in the Toyota showroom and they drove away my R32 and brought in a grey Prius, the salesman from Toyota said, "Are you sure you want to do this, sir?" I thought it was a classic. But from that to an electric car, that was that's a common step. It's nothing special. And I mean, we've sort of shunned reviewing hybrids just because the whole point of what we were trying to do was that you don't import fuel and burn it. You generate, that we can. Yep. As we're seeing happen, we could be, the idea is eventually to be fossil fuel free. Living in the real world where that's a massive challenge that is beyond imaginings, except it's very slowly happening. But I think we have to accept that, just from pure popularity of hybrids. And I mean, it's certainly a plug-in hybrid that can do more than 50 miles on a chart without using any petrol, I think is a big thing. And I mean, there were like the plug-in hybrid Prius I had did 12 miles if you plugged it in. So it was kind of pointless, But
I don't know if you remember the Ampera. So I was at
the
Vauxhall.
Ampera was great, actually. Yeah,
and, but that car was so ahead of its time.
Yeah,
it was. It was so ahead of its time. It was a plug-in hybrid, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And everyone was like, "This is never going to work," and it was too early.
Yeah.
But that was going back really to the first plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
But again, I think with everybody, people change their minds at different rates.
Yeah.
And having a strong plug-in hybrid technology when they can mostly run on electric gives them that confidence, whether that gap in between to then move them to a full electric. Not everyone will take that full plunge.
No.
But I think has been able to offer, we've got more plug-in hybrid cars coming at the end of the year.
Right.
Maybe 2 or 3 different models and types and what have you. So we're definitely catering for anyone that wants to move into a new energy vehicle.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so what can you list quickly what is for sale here? Because I've got so used to, I've just been in Australia for quite a long time. So my niece has a Dolphin, my sister-in-law has an Atto 3, and then there's another distant relative who's got a Seal. I was just going, this is ridiculous. This is a BYD fan. What the hell's happened?
Yeah, no.
But what is available here out of all those?
Okay, yeah, no, I can do. So, and I'll also list what's available and with the prices, because we've got a sale this weekend. So I'm not sure when this podcast is going out, but 15th to the 19th.
It goes out on Monday, so it goes out soon. Yeah.
Fantastic. 15th to the 19th of April, we've got 0% across the range and up to £1,000 additional from a retail. So mixture of electric and plug-in hybrid. So what have we got for sale? So first of all, we've got the Dolphin. Now the Dolphin is currently our smallest car. I would call it what we call a B plus segment. So that's about, if the people want to sort of work out sizing, it's about an ID3 size car. It's pure electric car. It's really, it's the offer that we've got on that is from 269 down, 269 a month on a 4-year PCP. So that's the Dolphin. You then go up a little bit in size and you go to the Atto 3. Now, the Atto 3 is a proper SUV. Yeah. It's our first car that we bought out. So it's an electric SUV. That is, I would say, for people sort of like a Volkswagen Tiguan, a Kia Sportage, Nissan Qashqai, that sort of size segment vehicle. That's full electric again, and that starts at, again, $399 a month. 399 deposit, so 399. So that car's there. We've then got 2 other electric models. We then have the Seal, which I guess I would say is probably a bit closest to Model 3, which is fully electric, stunning looking car. It's it's really good in terms of what it looks like and what it feels like. That car again is a retail offer. I'd have to double check with that. That's about $479 a month, but I think it's a bigger deposit in terms of what we put down on the Seal. And then we've got the C Line 7, which is our say it's a bit like a Model Y. Polestar 4, coupe SUV, again pure electric. And then finally, we've got the Seal U DMI, which is our, as I say, biggest seller in the UK, plug-in hybrid, up to 77 miles on one charge. And the list price of that car is £33,000. So it's super competitive. And again, you're talking about a £2,000 deposit, 349, 359 a month in terms of that. So 5 cars at the moment. Yeah. Small car coming on June the 10th. Yeah. We then have the Atto 2 electric car coming, which is like a small SUV, so like a Mocha, like a Kia EV3, that size. That comes in September, and then we've got a couple more DMI products of maybe a small saloon, small estate coming as well towards the end of the year. So we'll have about 9 models by the end of the year.
Wow, that is incredible. And I mean, it is what it sort of underlines, and what I was so aware of. It was really good to go to the Shanghai Automotive Show simply because of the scale, in a sense, and the and I've been saying this for years, the challenge to European and North American car makers, well-established brands that people have known and trusted and loved or hated for many decades. But the challenge to them from China is palpable. I mean, you really can feel it because you go there. Because I do remember going to the Geneva Motor Show. I think 2009, 2008, 9, somewhere around then, and I was there with Volvo. That's who I went with, and I can't remember what they were launching, but it was definitely electric or a plug-in hybrid, probably. But anyway, there was a BYD stand there, sort of, but like tucked around the back. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And there were kind of four. I remember them as being suggested to be used as taxis in London. There were 4 models, and they were, I was going, and I don't, like in comparison with Jack or Johnny Smith, people who have an incredible aesthetic understanding of car design and build quality. I don't have that. I can go, right, I kind of like it or I kind of don't. Those looked dangerous to me in 2008. They didn't look like they'd been tightened up.
Right.
They looked a bit loose. Now you look at any Chinese car. I mean, not just BYD, but many of the top brands coming out of China are as good as an Audi or a BMW. In terms of build quality and interior quality, the change has been the challenge, if you like, is huge. And I don't know how we deal with that. I mean, I think that's one of the things I think is interesting about this country. We'll often adopt, Japanese cars. We adopted very quickly. Korean cars we adopted very quickly in this country, and I think there is we're less prejudiced, if you like, than possibly some other countries about it. And also, we don't have a car production industry here anymore. When we used to, but we don't now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think you go back to, as you say, 2008, 2009. I think what a lot of the Chinese car manufacturers did, and what we definitely did, was we recruited well. We recruited Wolfgang Inga, who's designed Audi, designed Lamborghini. So, he's incredibly creative, and what he does on our models is fantastic. And designing that. So that's really, really helped us get ready for the European market. But you go closer to home, you're absolutely right, Robert. I mean, we've accepted those brands. And I remember being an area manager during Scrappage Scheme in 2008 and looking at Kias at 499 and Hyundais and thinking, God, where are these cars? Who's going to buy them?
Yeah.
And now, actually, if you look at Kia and Hyundai, the quality of the cars, the great dealer network that they've got, and what the product looks like, they've done an incredible job in terms of that. And the British public are absolutely more accepting of brands, but even more so now. I think according to Auto Trader, and this was the last one, so it might have even got bigger since then. I think when people shop, they have 8 brands on their shopping list.
Right.
So you're looking at 8 different brands, whereas you went back years ago, it was free. You would have shopped. And I think we're so much more open to new tech, new products as the British public, and of course, we just want something that's really good value, and looks good. And I think BYD are ticking those boxes really well. So you get so much kit and tech on the car. The price is really strong, and the build quality, dare I say, is exceptional. It's like, really what's not right, really?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, because I read somewhere about the dealerships. So because I think that is a side of electric cars that we've kind of not covered properly on the Fully Charged show. So we're always looking at new models that come out. We don't kind of do the follow-on. And it's something that I've kind of just got out of the habit of. But because of having electric cars, I haven't taken them in for a service every year because they're okay. And I know you should. And I've got a list. I've got a 2010 built 2010 in Japan Nissan Leaf, still on the road, perfectly. It's been amazing. It had terrible range when it was new. It's got terrible range now. It's got a new battery. It's fine. My daughter uses it all the time. It's great. But I have spent almost zero looking after it until this year. So this year it had to have welding. It had to have some new suspension and arms and things. It needed some love and care. But for the first time in getting on for 15 years that I've had it, and it's done 92,000 miles. Every single body panel has got either a big scratch or a major dent. It's not pristine. It's not a collector's item. It's been battered. But what that tells me is the traditional dealership model where I would go to Toyota and I'd buy a Prius and then I'd take it back there to have it serviced and have spare parts and oil, and that would cost money and I'd give them more money. That's kind of, well, I want to know, has that disappeared with an electric car company? Because essentially BYD are an electric car company as well. I know you do hybrids, but that's the main thing.
New energy vehicle
company. New energy vehicles, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so has it disappeared? So I guess there's a few different answers to that. You're absolutely right in terms of what an electric vehicle needs. It will visit the dealer a lot less. Yeah. I think we would push over the air updates, which I think is important software. So the over air updates can come, but like anything, sometimes it's always great when it's plugged into that dealer's system and what can pull through, because there's some things that aren't over the air done, which is really, really good. So I think, our vehicle is, an electric vehicle is basically every 2 years,
right?
Sort of 18,000 miles every 2 years. So that's when you're going to see that vehicle. Our plug-in hybrid is every 12 months. So you're going to see that more. And of course, that's going to have more of a traditional service. So there's a few things. I think, dealers generally make their money from new cars, from used cars, and from after sales. Right. Now, I guess as the after sales car part potentially diminishes, how are they therefore going to improve their revenue? Well, there's a few things, isn't there? I mean, there's a lot of tooling and tech you need for electric vehicle. Yeah. So actually, whereas we could just set up, I could go, do you know what? I'm a mechanic. I'm going to set up around the corner and do that. I might not A, have the training, or B, the tooling. Yeah. And that's something that's very important. So I think sometimes that you're absolutely right. So there's less time on the vehicle, but in theory, we're not employing techs anymore. We're employing software engineers. Yeah. So actually the level potentially of maybe the labor cost goes up, but the parts cost comes down. So you're there or thereabouts, potentially similar. I guess we'll wait and see how that develops throughout, because, you can't really set price. It just develops really where that is. I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is, from a retailer network, they need to sort of look at things that can replace that oil revenue. Yeah. Tires, is one thing. Yeah. As a customer, I really just want to go one place. Yes. I had a great relationship with a dealer that could look after me for tires, servicing, glass, all those things. Yeah. I'd never go anywhere else, because you just want that one relationship. So I think there's things like that, tires and glass, that they can do, which can sort of help, smart repair. It's what's it like when you scratch an alloy? Yeah. It's the worst thing in the world, isn't it? And a lot of people, if you could just pay 150 pounds and get that put back to new, you probably would. Yeah. So I think there's lots of things that a dealer can look at to do differently from that after sales revenue. And that's what they really need to sort of start planning more. Yeah. But I mean, from us, we've got dealers now. We've got 67 dealers nationwide. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's incredible. Right. So they're all over. Yeah.
We've got 28 partners. So what I mean by that is, for example, so the owner of the garage. So for example, we've got partners like Virtue, like Lithia, like Lookers. We've got some of the big ones. We've also got some local small groups, so like DM Keith in Yorkshire, City West Country in the southwest. So we've got a mixture of different levels of partners. Right. But what we want at BYD is to make sure that everybody can have a couple of sites, because we think when you've got 2 or 3 sites, what I don't want is 100 different partners with 100 different experiences. Yeah. We want to sort of manage the partners as much as we can, and that's one thing that we're doing here, is to try and grow with our existing partners. Right. Really.
Because that is a critically important thing. I won't mention manufacturers, but I did 2 talks for a very well-known European manufacturer to their dealership network. This is I'm going back 10 plus years, about how to present electric cars. But and I heard from the kind of PR team and the people I was working with at that company that was their biggest stumbling block. It was because the dealers didn't want to sell electric cars. They wanted to sell, so they would actively put people off. Someone would go in and go, I want the X, whatever it is, model. And they go, no, you want the diesel one. They're much more reliable. But I would assume that we've now moved on. That, your dealers, if someone comes in and goes, I want a Dolphin, they're not going to go, have you thought about the diesel Golf? They're not going to be doing that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, again, we're incredibly lucky with the dealers and the partners. We've got a really invested network. The network, if you think about, we were a startup in the UK in April 2023. Yeah, wow. The dealers that have invested, they've invested in the BYD journey. Right. And I often hear them say, what horse are you going to back? Because, of course, there's a number of different Chinese car manufacturers that are coming over. And often I hear, we feel we've backed the right horse with BYD, right. We feel that. But they're incredibly interested in BYD, and they've invested their future, right? They're saying, well, you know what, I've got some sites, I've got some space.
Yeah.
What do I do with that? So they're really invested in us working as well. And it's, for me, whenever I'm talking to them, it's our franchise, not their franchise. So I don't feel like I'm a traditional OEM that has to force them into doing things. I think they're so open to selling both electric and plug-in hybrid cars that they want the knowledge. So yeah, definitely, you shouldn't ever be getting that experience from a BYD dealer. And if you do, please give me a call and let me know.
No, I'm sure it won't happen. But it is. That's what it was. I read the term engaged dealer network, which is basically what you've explained now. Because I just made a note of that because.
Well, engagement is all about transparency in my mind. You know, in the beginning of the year, I went out to the dealers. I said, we've got an ambition to do a lot of cars this year, and I shared them with that ambition, what it was. I shared with where we were going to get them from, what the models were going to look like, talking about the different channels we were going to sell at. You know, some of them thought I was a little bit crazy in terms of where they'd been. And then, of course, when we delivered Q1, they're like, God, of course we can do those numbers. Look, we've done nearly 9,500 cars in Q1 with 4 models. You've now got, you're going to have more models and what have you. So they've really bought in, and you know, they're doing a great job. They really are doing a fantastic job.
Because the last thing I would love to ask you is do you see BYD opening manufacturing plants in Europe? I mean, I don't know if they already are. I've lost track now because there's so much news like that. And possibly in this country. I mean, is that even on the long list of things they might do?
Yeah, I think when I listened to what Stella said in interviews before, and again when I've been with Stella, so I think just for anyone that doesn't know, so Stella Lee is our vice president. So basically looks after both Europe and America. She actually started the company as well with the chairman, or maybe a few months after. And I'm going off tangent, but in the BYD museum, I love seeing pictures of Stella 30 years ago at a trade fair selling a battery. And you think, this is the person now that's running the business for Europe and Americas, you know, how to get behind that. And she just won World Car of the Year person.
Yes, which is great.
Which is really cool. But the question, so what, I guess sort of in theory, in quoting Stella, so as you know, we've got a plan, or you might know there's a plan to set a factory up in Hungary.
That's what I did know. Yes, I did know that.
Progress at the moment. BYD's view is always to make cars where they sell them. So of course, if we're selling them in Europe, then they'd like to make the cars in Europe as well. So that's sort of in terms of the European plans, and we'll see how that develops. I think in terms of UK, let's sort of watch this space. I think currently we're the biggest market in the UK in Europe. So biggest market for BYD in Europe. So thank you, everybody. Keep buying all these cars to keep us the number one market, and then we'll wait and see. But I think you touched on something earlier, which sort of again resonated with me, is, you know, Northamptonshire, Oxfordshire, which we spoke about offline, is basically the engineering capital of the world when it comes to motorsport, right, and automotive. So I guess all you can say is there's nothing in the plan, but you know, why would you, if you're going where where you want to build cars, maybe there's something there as well in terms of the level of people that we employ in the UK. You know, the engineers, right?
And I mean, the other thing that I have forgot to, because the 2 things I wanted to mention was Stella. I just think the fact that there's, I've done about 3 like public talks about electric vehicles in the last 12 months. And I just say to people, and it's slightly contentious, but I say, have you heard of Elon Musk? They all put their hands up. I said, have you heard of Stella Lee? No. And I said, well, Stella Lee makes more cars than Elon Musk ever has, and she's absolutely amazing. Google Stella Lee. You know, I've been doing. I think I'm the reason that she's been awarded this. I think it's entirely down to me. But
well, if that's the case, I'll absolutely. She sends her thanks, Robert.
No, that's true. But the other thing that I wanted to ask about was South America, because that's a kind of market that I think in Europe we're not aware of. But Mexico and South America, there's a lot of BYDs knocking about, from what I can understand.
Yeah. Again, it was a market that I wasn't really aware of. I was aware of Europe, aware of the States, aware of China, but didn't really think much about Latin America. But the car market over there, they're big car markets. I think Brazil and Mexico are about 1.5 million cars a year.
Wow.
You know, so they're sort of like, you know, the UK is about 2 million, just for everyone. But so they're big markets. You know, France is about 1.5 million, Germany's about 2.5, give or take. So it sort of gives people an idea of where they are. So they're big markets. And actually, we're doing incredibly. I think we're top 10 in both Brazil and Mexico. Wow. So we launched about a year earlier. And again, of course, the vehicles come straight from China to Mexico and Brazil. they don't have this wonderful thing that we have called GB type approval, which definitely slows the process of getting our vehicles to market in the UK. So they'll go through a lot quicker, but they'll see the cars a lot quicker than us. But yeah, they're doing a great job over there.
Yeah, no, it's a very impressive. The more we hear about it, I mean, I think that's one of the exciting things about the whole topic in a way, is that, you can look at any one individual market and go, oh, no, people don't want electric cars. You look at it globally, the uptake is mind-boggling. I mean, it's on such a vast scale now that it's very hard to comprehend it. And in markets that we, absolutely, as we say, we wouldn't even have thought about before.
Well, who would have said, look at what Norway have done, right? It's one of the coldest countries in Europe, and they've got 95% electric vehicles. And as we know, we've all experienced batteries not as good in the cold, like iPhones or whatever that might be. So and you think, well, they've really, really adopted it well in terms of
it's electric cars and heat pumps. Both of those, they don't work in the cold, except in Norway, where all the houses have heat pumps and all the cars are electric.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's very good. I'm looking at my notes. No, I think I've covered everything I wanted to. I mean, unless there's any particular thing you wanted to mention, it's been really exciting and talking to you. I'm so glad you mentioned bladder range. That really makes me feel, because I've mentioned it so many times, I always think, I'm just doing it for shock value, but I don't think I am. I think it's a real thing.
No, it's absolutely real. Every couple of hours, a certain age, my age now, I'm 46, I need to stop. So yeah.
I won't tell you how many times I need to stop. I need a car that's got 5 miles range at my age. Not true.
I'm afraid all of ours are much longer range than that, Robert. So
they are. But that's been really interesting to talk to you, Stephen. Thank you so much for your time. I think we live in exciting times, and a lot of things are changing very fast. And I think, well, the one thing I can guarantee is we're going to see a lot of BYDs on the road. And I think I always want people to notice, when you see a red double-decker bus, look at the front, the little round blue badge.
I think 74. We've got 74% of the electric share of buses in London.
Wow. So that's I think, the majority. I think it's fair to say.
Well, and you know how hard it would be to keep a bus on the road, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the work that goes on that, because of course the back and forth, the mileage and commercial. So the product we've got, we're in a great position. We're very lucky. So fantastic.
Great stuff. Thanks so much, Steve.
No worries. Thanks very much, Robert. Thank you for having me on.
Really hope you enjoyed that. Not going to say anything else. There's going to be more podcasts coming. I know Imogen's interviewing some very interesting people. And we're going to be doing some live podcasts soon. Well, more news on that as it happens. But I'm really looking forward to that. So we'll just be recording a podcast in front of a very small audience somewhere in the United Kingdom. Who knows where? That's all for now. Come back again next week. There'll be more. If you have been, thank you for listening.
We're really excited to partner with Duracell Energy to showcase their amazing renewable energy solutions. If you want to reduce your energy bills and join the renewable energy transition, installing home battery storage and solar panels at home is a great way to start. Duracell Energy's ecosystem of products typically partners with solar panels, but they can be used just as effectively without it, particularly for electric vehicle owners or anyone looking to take control of their energy. And with Duracell Energy's Platinum Homeowner offer, viewers can get a custom service that pairs you with top quality products and the best installers in your area. Plus, Duracell Energy's batteries, inverters, and EV chargers work together on one easy-to-use app. With features like dynamic tariff integration and grid services, you'll be able to maximize your return. Ready to get started? You can get your quote today. And don't forget, we're also giving away a Duracell Energy Bunny in every episode. Just answer the question about fully charged by following the link in the description. Good luck!